Okay. Again, we're going to try this again. Bring the meeting to order. Minutes, I'll follow up with Christy and find out where we are. She might show up with those tonight, so we'll manage that as we go forward. Sounds like we have a waterfall in the background, so I think that's a little loud. So we'll follow up with that. We just went through kind of the description of the meeting. Meeting is at 6. And I will send out some details. I will send out some details on the specifics, you know, if we have to be even earlier than what we just talked about, and work through that. And that'll kind of be the detail for that piece. Anybody have any questions or comments on that? I think we're good. Okay. The other I want to mention, right, is we're going to talk in detail about the report, but from an admin standpoint, I've been working on kind of the material that we're going to use as the presentation, and it's not ready to share yet. It needs some spin and polish on it, so I need to do that. I don't know exactly when it's due. I asked the question Tuesday this week. I said, when is this due? When do you have to have the material? I heard that it needed to be in 72 hours before the meeting, but nobody answered my question. So I'm pushing all the way to Monday morning. So that is, so report and presentation already Monday morning, okay? So what that means is when I get that material ready, hopefully I'm going to shoot for a copy to you guys by noon tomorrow. I'd like to send it to you and get feedback, but just recognize I can't reshuffle it. I don't have the bandwidth to do that before we'd have to hand it in. So it's going to be pretty solid by the time you guys see it. But give me feedback, whatever feedback you got, okay? And it'll be presentation versus a detailed script for the talking points, which will come mostly from our report, right? That's basically the content and all we talked about.
Because we have so many messages coming back and forth, and I have like email strings a mile long. When we do review everything and send it back to you, and you then make those changes, can you somehow in the subject line go number 2 or number 3?
Good. Excellent idea.
I don't
So that you know what the sequence is. Yeah, mail systems are a little challenging in trying to understand those details. I will be glad to do that. Change the subject line when I reply back and say, you know, A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Whatever, so that I know which one I'm reading now, because otherwise I'm going to be jumping back and forth. I'm sorry.
Good. No problem. That's easy to do. I will do that. And as far as feedback goes, right, Randy, you did a good job on the report kind of content. You didn't go in and make the modifications to the report, so you can kind of see what the changes are that you made without having to search through what was modified in the report. We're still that report still needs work, so you know we got to polish that some. But that was a good way to do it, and I'd ask you to do the same thing when we do the pitch feedback, right? Page and some reference to content so that I know exactly what you're talking about. Does that make sense? Okay.
So you have a report format that you are using?
I have a pitch format that is basically the template that the town's given us.
Okay.
That is the sequence of what was our charge and what are our 4 topics of things we're going to talk about. You know, recommendations for things that you should do as far as chase after the tax situation. All that is all going to be kind of spelled out, but in PowerPoint.
Good.
In sequence.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what will be on that screen when we do the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Good with all that? Okay. So I'm going to make a general comment about the report. We've got a really good start, and it seems like it needs a fair amount of work. So what I want to do with the discussion today, first highlight the beach activity, right? What did we learn from the beaches? Very similar to our conversations last week, kind of like, it's not a pro and con, but it's what are the specific things we want to highlight that we learned from the beaches that kind of brings out, Mary Ann, the content that you put in that said, we learned this from Ocean Isle, we learned this from Holden Beach, we've got this from Carteret County, we've got this from Dare County, et cetera. And I just want to kind of raise that up so that that can be, a summary of the things that we think should most be highlighted. So that's what I want to do. And then we can put more content in the report, but the pages for the presentation really need to, to be fairly concise and highlight maybe 3 or 4 or 5 best practices that we picked up. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So why don't we start that conversation now? Ready, set, go.
I don't really, to be frank, I don't really have a lot of comments on those sections because I think we've looked at the different towns, and I think that, we've looked at Topsail Beach, Surf City, and North Topsail Beach. North Topsail Beach, I think, was dropped out of that proposal. Holden Beach, Ocean Isle Beach, and brought up to Sandbridge, Virginia. I think that, I think one of the things we might try to highlight for those is where each one of those, not so much the town being similar to Oak Island in geography so much as how those entities went about doing what they did. I mean, essentially, we looked at Ocean Isle Beach and we saw essentially that they started a program many years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe highlighting what they have done and whether or not that applies to where we are. I think if I remember correctly, I looked back at notes, but I think Topsail Beach is just starting theirs now, even though they essentially were the subject of some discussion back in 2017. And they've kind of been like us trying to figure out exactly how they move forward. And so on. I mean, I think that would be the way to do those. I mean, I don't have enough as far as notes in here, but we've discussed them in detail, so I think that should be, I think that's the way I would go with those.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. What I am wrestling with in my mind right now is with about 5 minutes on this topic, how do we highlight that to the council, right?
Well, I would just say that you looked at the other beaches, and while they're using different methods, they all started long before we did. So it's really hard to compare people that have started something in 2001 to people that are starting something now. So it's really not relevant what they've done because we can't do what they're doing.
One part is relevant. They're doing something.
Right. We are.
Have been doing it for a while.
Yes.
Right. But they're doing something instead of kicking the can down the road. They're doing something. Now, there might be different ways of doing it. Okay, granted, and maybe it's taken years for them to do those things, understood. But something is being done, whereas we are not as proactive. And we need the council to understand that the citizens want this done. We want something done. The debate is, what do we want done? But the thing is, we cannot wait any longer, so they need to either make a decision and not be everybody's best buddy, but they can no longer not do anything.
And some of those opportunities have passed us up.
Right.
And essentially, I think we should make it clear that some of the opportunities that the other towns took advantage of no longer are available to Oak Island.
Which has now put us in a little bit more of a corner that we need to be more.
Can you give me an example of that?
Well, for instance, I think one of the beaches or whatever, when we had the opportunity in 2001 to go with the 50-year plan, I think one of those beaches actually took that opportunity and has been moving forward with the Corps of Engineers ever since. Maybe that was Ocean Isle Beach, I can't remember. But they moved forward during that time. We don't have that opportunity to do that because that essentially is no longer an option.
I believe that might be it, that we're talking about.
Yeah, start at working with the Beach on the 50-year plan. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And then
So,
get the 30 years.
But I don't think we
Right.
have to highlight every single beach in what they're doing. I think we just need to say that
Right,
they're
right.
all doing something, we're
Right.
doing nothing.
Right,
yeah.
And we need to do something. We've determined as a committee, we need to do something.
right.
Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely true.
Right.
And I think that the other thing is I think even if it's just a statement, that we say that what some of these other beaches have done in the past, because they started earlier, are no longer an option for Ocala. I mean, I don't think we have to get any
Yeah, I
details
agree.
unless
That's,
council
yeah, I
asks.
agree. That's enough.
But you just say a sentence that those are no longer an option for us.
Well, how do we know working with the Army Corps of Engineers isn't an option?
Well, because what
they're
did,
not
we-
on that
Oh,
proposal.
not on that proposal. Okay, I
That
understand
the
that.
other beaches used that committed the Army Corps of Engineers to a 50-year plan.
And ours got shelved.
We didn't do it, so it's no longer available.
and I
for
don't
us.
think we need to explain each what everybody
Yeah,
did. That's,
I
I think
agree.
that's all we need to say.
Well, so let's, a couple of questions looking at this from a couple of perspectives, right? So from what we saw of other beaches and how they fund their beach nourishment, any best practices do we know there on the funding side? I think grants is one of the things.
Thank you.
So grants, I think, goes in there as one thing that other beaches are doing that we should research and look into.
Lobbyists are phenomenal, too.
Thank you. So,
They're paid to do this. They're the experts on this, but we are not.
But even if we look into grants, the thing is that you have to have an ongoing funding source. Grants at some point down the road may allow you to cut back on whatever you're doing, but grants today aren't gonna help you.
Our number one funding
Since-
source is paid parking.
Right. I mean, we were
Without a
talking,
doubt.
but we were talking about, like, for example, everybody thought it'd be easier for us because we had this $20 million. Well, find out that that's not necessarily the case because you have to use it by a certain period of time, and the town is not going to be ready to do
And we don't have the
the-
$20 million.
And we, well, besides, yeah, right, we don't have it, but I mean, even if we do get it at some point, it's not going to be, it's not, it's going to have to be spent before the town is ready to do this project. Now, if we had been working on this project 2 years ago,
Right.
and all of
Yeah,
a sudden
that's
we.
what
But that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that's one of those things that we have to, when we talk about grants, essentially we have to say that we have to have a funding mechanism in place to cover the cost. If we get grants along the way, we certainly should continue to pursue grants. Most every person I've talked to that runs a town or whatever says that they use grants a lot. But they're to a certain extent, they're for a project. Whether it could
So
be-
let me ask a question, because I think you just raised something to me that I didn't think about, is when we looked at the quote master plan, right? The master plan is in fact, it's a description of an engineering effort. It's really all it is, right? And so if you took a step back and say, in order to be successful here, to build a master plan that includes funding, timing, the necessary resources, the necessary engagement, the necessary lobbying and support that you need locally and at a state level, to me, that's more of a master plan than what we have today. Right?
However, if we do that,
Well,
we will do nothing.
that's not true. You know we have a grant writer. You know we apply for grants every year. I mean, like, to say that we need a grant writer, we have one. To say that we need to be applying for every grant, the town does apply for every grant that's available. The grant writer goes out and says, here are all the grants that are available this year, here are the ones I think you can apply for. So for us to say some of these things to town council in front of citizens is going to sound very bad on our part, because it's not true for
Why
us
don't
to
we
say
just
that there are
go
not
for
grants.
Continue to go for grants.
Well, so let me follow my theme here, right? When I think of a master plan, it's almost like a campaign of diverse topics that in order to be successful, you got to manage them all. And if the grant writing situation, just as an example, if you do not have other things in place, funding, like you just mentioned, Randy, and other things in place, you can't maximize the grant writing situation.
That's correct.
So if that's true, then your master plan should have something wrapped around how you're going to go from step A and B to further down the road that says, at this point, I know that I can maximize grants because I've done something that sets the foundation for that and meets some prerequisites.
Sort of. I mean, a grant essentially is for a thing. The federal government or the North Carolina state legislature says that we're going to give local communities a grant to do a broad brush of things. Some communities will be able to take advantage of those grants. The town manager I talk to sort of on a regular basis, significant portion of his town is under a certain poverty level, so there are other grants that are available to him. He wants to do certain things with those grants. So the grant writers, like we have here, know what type of projects or whatever the town is working on, and will go out and look and say, is there a grant? It's not so much they're going out looking for a grant to put sand on the beach. They're looking for grants that the town could potentially qualify for. They go to the town and ask, do you want to do that? Some of the grants also require matching. The town essentially has to put up a certain amount of that. It can be an in-kind matching. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash.
I don't think it's relevant what every kind of grant we could go for. We have limited time here. Basically, we say we continue to pursue grants. If Christy says we have a grant writer, we verify that. But we can't sit here and figure out.
We did verify that with
Yeah,
David
we did.
Kelly.
Yeah.
He told us her name, so we
Okay,
know we have a grant
So we have
writer.
a grant writer.
Right.
So why don't we continue to pursue grants? Is that a fair statement?
And she does. This is my point though, right? We just need to be careful of how we state things because
I don't think we need to get into what all the different kinds of grants are and what the odds of getting a grant versus not getting a grant are. I think we need to be concise, to the point, and make some recommendations. If we go in there wishy-washy, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think the point is, go ahead.
Real quick, I hate to open up a can of worms, but this is the first time I heard that we actually have grant writers.
no, I've said it in the past 2 meetings.
You
I
have.
said it.
You have.
Then I've been tired. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's fine. It's fine.
My
But
point is, what have they so far done in assistance to these beaches? Have they done?
yes, that's how we get our grants. That's how we get all the grants that are listed there. Is we get that from Melanie.
That's
And
the
every
difference.
week, she talks to David Kelly and says, here are the projects. And for not just beach, but our splash park, our shade pavilion, our pavilions,
Splash Park was.
all made
Okay,
with the
so,
grant.
so
Rebecca.
But still, Melanie, I
grants
mean,
are a component, right, that we'll talk about. Other beach activity around us that identified any other funding best practices that we think we should share.
Increase our parking stickers from $10 to $40 or $50.
For the parking situation. What other ones?
Lobbyists. I like that.
Lobbyists, I got that one.
Okay.
Lobbyists go back to the same thing about grant. I mean, you have to have, you
Not-
have to have,
Not, no, I don't, I think it's similar in that it's a push of some kind of influence. But I think the advantage of the lobbyist situation, and I'll just based on anecdotal information that I've picked up from town people, we don't have good relationships with all the people we could maximize our relationships with. And if we did that, we might be able to do something like increasing accommodations tax, right? And we can't do that now because people don't like each other and they butt heads, and that's unfortunate. So a relationship mending activity is an opportunity, right?
Yes.
Yes.
and I think all of those are good. But one of the things most people are going to go, when you go to whoever it is, they're going to ask you, what have you done? I mean, if you go to legislators or you go to other people, they'll ask, what have you done?
Well, and that's fine. I get it, Randy. You got it. You have to belly up and say, I'm going to do something. But that doesn't mean you don't consider the other things in parallel to that to move forward, right? That's the point. So again, I'm going to ask the funding question again because people have had to tax or assess or whatever. Is there anything that we saw that was unique that we would highlight in any of those areas?
One part that's unique is that the town has that legislative piece from 2001 that allows us to do something that
Right.
other communities can't do.
Right, I agree.
And Ocean Isle did mention to try to move forward on the local meal plan, because I think at one point in time, they did do a tax on a local meal plan. And that's why I put that in that note. The mayor specifically brought that up.
And I think it's important when we talk about funding that we make it clear that we did look at an additional accommodations tax, but North Carolina legislature does not allow it without legislative approval. We can't go in there and say we didn't look at this and have any credibility.
I agree. They know that we've tried to exhaust every avenue available to us. Here's how we got this door shut, or this is how we opened up this door with further questions.
Okay. So I think if we highlight I think highlighting the timeline, right, we should have started a long time ago, is a given. So Randy, your Sandbridge example, I thought was almost a model for doing this. Did everybody else look at that in detail?
In part. I did look at it in part.
I think I could probably
But it's
go
on the
through there and
mainland.
say, there's 3 or 4 very, very basic best practices that for somebody that's been doing it for a long time, here's the handful of factors of success that I could see. Anybody else got any comments to that?
That was the
They're
only
main.
one that I could find, and there may be others that I just don't know about, but that's the only one I could find that has actually been doing an engineered beach for almost 20 years.
Consider they're the
That's where
mainland.
you got that.
They're a mainland, they're not an island, so that makes a tad of difference. But that's true. They have been doing
But they
engineer.
are.
But they had
are managing
processes.
beachfront.
Yeah,
Right.
they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they, before they started it, they had a significant beach erosion
Studies.
problem like we had started to have.
And if you go to Topsail, they have major beach erosion problems. I
That's
looked at
why
all
they're-
these beaches before I moved, so.
That's
I'm
why
very
they've
familiar.
started now, yeah.
That's why I didn't choose that folder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your
Sorry.
thoughts? What do you have on yours? What do you have listed?
Well,
in-
you kind of got my thoughts by my line of questioning. I
Okay.
think.
Just want to make sure.
So,
That I'm on.
I think that there are a few things, but I don't see any big glaring light bulbs that come on and say, oh, here's something we all should be doing, right? The one other thing that's related to beaches, but it's not about individual beaches, is in a conversation I had with David Kelly, I asked him about the beach coalition, of which we actually have one, right? Where they get together, I believe it's quarterly, and they talk about what is going on in their particular areas, and it's basically it's almost exclusively operational, right? What is, what's happening with your, water rescue teams? What's happening with your fire department? What's happening, highlighting and just having a chat about that. And one of the things that I thought was elevating the potential impact of a beach coalition to collectively go and talk to people in Brunswick County, for example, right? Or at the state level, instead of being an operational team, it could be a team with a higher, more influential degree of leadership that would drive things from a larger
point.
perspective, right?
That's-
So I'll throw that out there. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Group of mayors or town managers that get together quarterly and just discuss items.
I think it's what you just said. It's not even it's not staffed as a, as a thing. But if I think about if we push a lobbying idea and then escalate the lobbying idea with you know, the influence that comes with a line of beaches as opposed to just one municipality, then you've got an opportunity.
That basically that we form or actively reach out proactively to the other towns, and that would probably be David Kelly's job, to reach out to the other town managers and set up conversations. When I talked to Wrightsville Beach, the town manager, Tim Owens, said he'd be more than happy to come to Oak Island and meet with our town council on his time. He'd be happy to. He's all for a beach people talking. And I'm sure your Ocean Isle person was the same.
And I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
And she goes to something that's not just the mayor's meetings, but, and Dara mentioned something about there being a byways or some sort of beach coalition that people get together as well. But Ocean Isle and Holden, they talk all the time, and they said,
To the town manager, because as you know, under our political structure, the mayor has very limited power. The town power is in the town council. The mayor basically can call meetings. That's pretty much their power of legislation.
put in the strategy.
Yeah.
Mayor's job to strategize.
I know in talking to several other town managers, they on a regular basis do meet with groups like this. But usually it's the town manager and the mayor go. And the reason the two of them go is because one is the sort of the political side and one is the, you know, the
But they're
executive
very
side. I mean, the town manager is hired by the town council or whatever. So by putting the two of them together, and that's what most of them that I've talked to do, by putting the two of them together whenever they meet with legislators or whenever they meet with politicians coming through and stuff like that, that's what, they usually do it as a tandem. But you wouldn't have to, but I'm just throwing that out as what they actually
I can just say,
practice.
from my own experience, when I ran the practices for the accounting firms, or benefits practices, I proactively reached out to my competitors, and we got together and had lunch. We were friends. You know, we're all competing, but we're not out there to kill each other, and we helped each other come up with ideas. And it's the only way to operate in any environment, so we're all friends to this day. We weren't trying to steal work from each other, and I don't understand why we haven't. If I was here, I would have reached out to every single town manager to have conversations about best practices.
And there is power in number. I mean, if
Yeah.
one of us says we've got an issue.
We know we have
If
two.
all of us say we've got an issue, then you're gonna we can wipe out, you know, a third of the coast if we don't all buckle together and come together. Otherwise, now we're in trouble. So
Right.
there is power in numbers. I agree.
But, you know, talk to the Ocean Isle, they'd be thrilled to talk to us. Carolina Beach, Wrightsville, I'm sure Carolina Beach is the same. I mean,
Holden is right next door.
yeah, Holden will happily, we're not competitors.
No, we don't-
There's
we're not
enough business
competing.
for everybody.
And there was a bunch of people that got together and was talking the other day that said it would be really cool if even you did it on the county level. Once you get the towns
Right.
like that, then you take it county by county, and the counties get with the legislature together after. It's going to take time. I'm not saying overnight, but you start at the town level. Then
But
you
it
work
could-
your way to the county.
Yeah, it could help in the long run,
Get a long-term
you know,
plan.
years out here. And that's the whole idea behind this, is to have a long-term, the whole idea is to have a long-term funding plan for the project. I mean, that's the short answer. It's a long-term funding plan for the project.
But I would ask again, just being careful and wary, how do we know for certain that David Kelly is not reaching out to other town managers?
I just
Have we
told, I
asked
just
him?
told the story that.
I'm sorry, I
of how
missed it
they're
then,
doing
okay,
it.
I apologize.
Yeah.
And Wrightsville Beach has never heard from them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, those,
Just want to be clear.
those things are operational discussions, and they do not get into, you know, binding together to push an initiative. They don't get into any of that. It's just.
Oh, you were
operational
legit
best
talking about the
practice.
beach coalition thing?
Yes.
I thought you meant you asked David Kelly if he talks to other town managers on a regular basis.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
No,
no,
no, we're talking about focusing on best practices for the beach nourishment getting the funding for beach nourishment, that type of thing.
Okay. So as far as what other beaches do, anybody have any other final thoughts on that particular topic?
I think Randy put it perfectly. The other beaches started before we did, and lots, we can find best practices, but it's hard to compare us to some people that have been working on something for 20 years.
Right. But no matter what, we got to do something.
We've got to do something.
That's the bottom line.
That's our bottom line. That's my bottom line. I'm just one
Yeah, mine
person on the
too.
committee. I don't think we
Federal
need
departments.
to go back out and start the whole process over. I thought Moffett was a competent engineer. We're going to go out and find one that agrees with, you don't need to do anything?
I don't think anybody's saying that, Terry. Where'd you get that idea?
Talked to the town manager or whatever, one of the specific things we asked was, when they did their due diligence on these companies, what essentially why did they choose these particular companies? And essentially, their answer is that from their knowledge, they were the best in the field. Essentially, they picked the best ones. They have the expertise, and not only that, but they're tied. The Moffett and Nichols are tied well into FEMA as well as the Corps of Engineers. The Carter Group is tied into the legislation. So they know they have those contacts. That's why they chose those.
And I think we ought to highlight that in our report, that we chose people because based on their competence, and not that, because there's a lot of, if you read a lot of stuff out there's a lot of people thinking that we can do something else that doesn't cost us anything. I believe a Moffett would have looked at that option. There's no magic
I
bullet
think
out
that
there.
the statements that we are going to make about Carter and Moffett were already established.
Randy said it perfectly again in my book.
And we're not,
Right.
to question their competence is.
No, I don't think that was even ever brought up.
I think that's a path that I don't think anybody would
So the
take.
question, did they look at every alternative? We can't do that either.
Not in a time frame that we have, anyway.
Bed since 2001 at least.
No, I'm talking about, I thought you were talking about
We've
Sand.
had these guys since 2017.
Right, so they've been looking, and they've been recommending it since 2017, and they've been kicking the can down the road since 2017.
And as
Would
the
still
price
continue
continues
to
to go
do
up.
if you encourage them. They have to make a decision, is all I'm saying. They can't make a decision based on our report saying, well, these guys said that we should start over again.
Well, and you need to make a decision based on updated studies, Randy and Terry both. You have to do it on studies. You can't do it just because somebody's giving you
we do
5
another
seconds
study.
and you're supposed to accept that for the gospel.
Well, what do you,
Where's our updated studies? That, you're making us, I'd like to see
But
them.
again,
That's all I
I'm just
wanna
playing
state.
Devil's advocate. Why would they want to invest more money right now if they haven't gotten anything from us so far?
If you read, all I'm saying is if you read the different beaches, they all update their studies. They all have relevant information. Even Moffett Nickel at this point in time is working with Carteret County on the BOEM to try to see if there's sand out there in the federal government area that they could ship sand in. They could also be doing that for
well,
us
I don't
as
think
well.
it's our job to figure out if we can find sand, too. I
No,
think
but that's
we're
just an
assuming we can.
issue as to.
But there's a lot of issues that we could sit here and highlight all night long.
Well, we're not
of why to do nothing.
No, I'm not saying don't do anything,
Well,
Terry.
you're highlighting
Let's
all the
move on.
negatives.
'Cause
You're highlighting
we all
every
agree that
negative.
something is needed.
Okay.
We don't
So-
need to highlight negatives.
So I think we've wrapped on beach contributions, what we learned from other beaches. Anybody got anything else? I think we're wrapped there. All right, next item. So the final report, as it looks right now, I think needs work. And I would, as it looks today, I don't know that I would hand that to town council. I have concerns. It needs polish, and I think we've got gaps in content. So Randy, you sent ideas through. Anybody else have ideas about the report and what it looks like and an approach to try to take care of it, to try to polish it up.
It does need to be further polished, I agree. I mean,
Pros and cons.
I put together a couple, just kind of an outline, and this was just from my thoughts more than anything else on things that I've learned through our discussions and so on and so forth. And I'm not let me kind of throw this out and see if this might be because I think one of the things we need to do on this report is tighten it up a lot, make it a lot more concise. One of the things I think that perhaps we should emphasize the actions that the committee has taken in response to the directive from council. We were given this directive X, and I kind of outlined it in my piece. This is what we were told to do. And what did we do, essentially, as a result of that? We held meetings with Moffitt and Nickel, as well as the Carter Group. We looked at alternative funding sources. We looked at the meals tax. We looked at an accommodations tax. We looked at a lodging tax. Found that they were both two different things. We looked at paid parking. We looked at grants. We looked at assistance from Brunswick County, from the North Carolina legislation, and from Congress. And I think we can say that we looked at those different funding sources and very quickly say, at this point, this is viable. At this point, this is not viable. The meals tax, a very quick summary would be the meals tax, the town has tried to pursue it. It's stuck in committee in the North Carolina legislature. We don't know whether it ever come out again. So on. Something like that. Then we can say we also looked at surrounding beaches for suggestions. We looked at what Topsail Beach was doing. We looked at Surf City and North Topsail Beach. We looked at Holden Beach, Ocean Isle Beach, and Sandbridge. And we can, this is what we looked at these things. And this is what, a very quick summary, not of each one of those things, but just like we were saying before. We've looked at them. For many of the cases, the ship has sailed, so to speak. We can't do what many of these places are doing because they started a lot earlier than we did. Then I think we can say we even discuss ways to protect the beach once we have a engineered, manufactured, whatever type we want to call it, a beach. We've looked at sand vegetation. We've looked at beach access management. And then at that point, as a result of our information gathering and discussions among committee members, we took a vote and decided that we think the best recommendation to town council would be X. And
I'd like to add one more thing, and that we really do need to end it with, no matter what we decided on, this is a continuation. This is not a cut and dry deal. It's not just that we're going to have to get money this one time and that's it. This will be ongoing, so we appreciate that they're working hard for it, but the citizens need to know this is not the end, that we will need to continue preserving this at the best available, the best ways that we can. That's important because when I first got this whole thing, I thought this is one-shot deal and that's it. No, it's not a one-shot deal. And I think everybody needs to know this so that we can say, hey.
Exactly. I think you're exactly right.
And
it's a continuing project and needs to go on. And that, at some future time, whatever we establish now on how we would do this, how we would pay for it, is an ongoing, we have to make a commitment to doing it. And we have to make a commitment now to how we're going to start funding it.
Yeah.
But if later on a grant comes available that we can use, the meals tax comes about, the accommodations tax can change, the legislation changes that it can do different things. If it turns out that we institute paid parking and it turns out to be a lot more lucrative than we expected it to be, or it turns out not to be viable. Either way, as we go along, we'll make the town council, we'll be in a position to make those changes in the funding as we go along. But once you decide to go down this path, you have to be committed to coming up with these types of amounts
And
for the
perhaps-
foreseeable future.
And perhaps have a committee established at Oak Island that takes what we have now done and continues to follow through. Citizens who can follow through with this, not council, but citizens, so that we don't ever lose our grip on this again, because that's what we've lost. It slipped right between our fingers. So if we can get a committee established that does continue it, then we have a starting point in a book, in a novel, and we just go to, what did we do 10 years ago, instead of, all of us pulling stuff out.
And there's one other thing, I don't know whether we want to raise that, but considering the numbers we're talking about, the commitment we're asking the citizens of Oak Island to make to this project, would it be worthwhile to hire a sand manager, for want of a better term? Would it be worthwhile to hire somebody that would be a assistant town manager for something like this, so that that person can make sure that the emphasis stays on sand management and funding?
Right, so that
Somebody that makes sure that when the grant writer is looking for grants,
Right.
that essentially they're keeping in mind that this is this.
Part of it.
Somebody that
Comprehensive
can actually
plan.
continue to follow up on the meals tax or the accommodations tax
Or
or
the
whatever.
parking
Somebody
tax.
can right, somebody can actually,
that it doesn't get filtered somewhere else all of a
Right.
sudden, and we only get a percentage because something got changed.
right, somebody that
Yeah.
essentially can periodically, and a lot of this wouldn't take a lot, but someone that would essentially, each year or whatever, assess the paid parking to see whether it seems to, does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. I'd like to give just a show because I think if you're going to have a strategy and an execution plan that's long-term, and you do not have a person that's dedicated to the execution of that plan, you cannot be successful. Does everybody believe that?
Yes,
I think that's a key recommendation.
Absolutely.
I think that's a key recommendation, is if you're going to do this to this scale, you better have a dedicated, at least a single person, that it's their job to make sure that it gets done.
right, exactly.
And it's-
But have committees like this to continue on, because we need to have, the citizens have to have their input. We need that.
I mean, something like someone that's holding the, assistant manager for whatever. It seems like it's kind of a big planning project.
Research and planning.
Well,
Part of
what
the
I'm thinking in terms
comprehensive
of
plan.
is, I think it's NC State that has it has an urban affairs program, one of the more,
And North Carolina, Western.
but essentially, someone coming out of that program who wants to get started in the field of being a town manager or town planner or something like that, the system manager's spot is ideal. Yeah, I'm just because I come from that field, I guess I'm making a pitch, but what I'm saying is that's the way you could go. I'm getting a little too far down in the weeds.
No, I think that's a great key recommendation to make sure that makes the discussion, because your points are great. I don't know how with a group that sits here that could turn over every 2 years, you maintain continuity. How do you do that?
That's
I
what you
agree.
have to have with the sewer project and stuff like that. A big project like that, the one thing you need is you need a point
I think
person.
it's called, we just call it project manager. But I agree with Sue's point that we also need, one of the problems that I think that I've seen with this whole process is a lack of understanding, including me, that we don't need just $40 million. We need continuous funding. So what I think having a citizen forum at least, where the citizens can come in and get updated by the sand project manager would be perfect. I don't think we need a committee, but I do think we need the I like your idea, Randy, the sand project manager to have on regular meetings to update the town and let them ask questions about what's being done, give us some opinions on where we're going to go from here. Because we have had such a lack of information on this.
Right.
And the people, I've lived here since 2015. The first time I ever heard anything was 2017. Randy's lived here forever. So he knows 2001, they basically were talking about this. And now I know all that, through all the data I've seen. But there's a lot of people like me that aren't aware that we've been looking at this since 2001.
Well, that's, it's kind of interesting. One of the best things that Mike did when he came here was setting up the current. Because people use this all the time. I mean, I was being constantly, I guess because people knew I'd been around for a while or whatever, but I was constantly asked by neighbors, what does this mean? What is this? How does this work? So and so forth like that. But as soon as he came in, one of the first things that he recognized was that you need to go out there and do that. I mean, I have a note down here and says, perhaps the current could explain where the accommodation tax and sand tax has gone in the past. How have we spent it? What is it?
That money.
I mean, these are things that, but essentially, Mike needs to hear from somebody else to know what to put in the current. I mean, I'm sure he meets with the different department heads and so on and so forth to come up with that. But having someone like that, a sand manager or something.
Project manager.
Project manager would allow them to feed into, and as it goes along. I mean, if you, for example, he came on not too long after the hurricane, and we were doing all these things. Nobody knew what was happening.
Right.
When are you going to put the boardwalks over the
Right.
canal? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that?
Well, you live in ground zero like me. We didn't know what was happening.
Right. But essentially, soon after that, with establishing the current, reestablishing that website, the one thing he was doing is explaining to people. So I have to tell you, to be honest, I was getting, 5, 6, 7, 10 conversations, people calling me a day saying, what's going on with this and stuff. Once he initiated that,
Well, I'd like to make,
they can reach out there and know exactly what.
I would like to make a recommendation. And I don't know if you want to do this, Rick, and I don't know if you want to do this, Randy. I would recommend that the two of you get together on this report. I like everything you're saying, and I think Rick's writing the final report. It's really up to you, though, Rick, because what you've said, I wrote down something just to get something. I'm one of these people that I like to start stuff. I like to do stuff. And I like to talk too, but I like to do stuff. But we've got 1 week to come up with a report.
1 week? No. We got like 2 or 3
1
days.
weekend.
Yeah, 1 weekend, yeah.
So we just, and I think everything you're saying, I like the sand project manager. I never thought of that one in Burris.
So Randy, what you were describing, or did you finish your sequence of those things?
Yeah, no, that was it. No, that was it. Yeah, no, that
So,
was it.
so how would you feel, this is a big ask, but how would you feel about taking the content we have, organizing that in its sequence that you just described, and putting the polish on it?
If I had internet access, I would have no problem with doing that, but I literally do not have it. I mean, literally just to put that little piece together, the other day.
Took a long time.
It took 9 hours. It took a good 9 hours maybe just put that together, because I literally can't even cut and paste to do that. So, I mean, they put in a new mesh system in it. It's down more than it is up. I've started documenting how many times it goes down, and then it's a page.
Like you're on your own, Rick.
I can probably do
Can
it.
2 people come together, or is that not allowed?
Yeah, you can do
I mean,
that.
could he
Two
come to
people.
your house,
Yeah.
and you two, because he
Yeah.
doesn't have the internet, can he come to your house and you guys sit down, or?
That's what I was recommending.
I'm not sure Randy wants to do that. Look at his face.
It's a
Pros and cons.
possibility,
Make
it's
sure
a
you include
possibility
pros
that
and cons.
tomorrow afternoon, when they come and try to get it up, that it will get it back the way it's supposed to be. It will but I
So,
don't know.
so here's the time challenge that I have, right, is I have to put that pitch together that's going to be what everybody sees, right? And I think that is going to probably cover, in total content of what the report should cover, it's going to cover about 25%. It's going to be our recommendations and our highlights of things. And I've got guests coming tomorrow afternoon that are going to be here for the weekend, so I'm time challenged there too. So to try to do the report plus the pitch, plus my other challenges, my personal challenges, I can't do that. So I will continue to work on the pitch because that is truly what everybody's going to see and hear about. So that needs to be priority one. The next priority is the state of our report.
I mean, your notes are there, right? It's just the
All
outline.
you need is a flash
I can
drive.
do it in, I mean, I can do it in hard.
If you do it in a
copy.
flash
It's just-
drive, you just give a flash drive to anybody on the committee and they can download it.
I just can't, the problem is I can't get, I mean, that was a problem last night essentially. Yesterday, I essentially was looking at one thing, I could bring stuff up, but then I couldn't, as long as it was up and sitting there. So that meant I was transferring everything to a piece of paper and then trying to, anyway.
Why don't you just
Yeah,
use a
because you were
flash
doing
drive?
that via email too, which makes it especially challenging.
Right, yeah, so, I mean, I can flesh out a lot of these notes that I want. I can probably do some of that tonight or whatever, but whether I can actually send it to you or not, that's where it
Well, but
comes
if
down
you-
to.
So if you can, without internet access, create a document, then let me know when you have a document to share, and we'll figure that part out. If you don't have internet, we can, like you said, put on a flash drive, and we'll figure out how to exchange that flash drive. I'll drive to your house or whatever to make sure that we can do that.
Or, my house is open.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's,
I've got
most of-
internet.
Some of the stuff is there, but anyway, that's where the issue is. But anyway, I tell you what I'll do is I will try to flesh out these pieces I can in hard copy or whatever, and if it ends up being with just me printing it off or whatever, that's fine. But I think if I can outline, expand on a lot of this stuff, and then maybe you can just go from there with it. I can probably do that tonight and have it,
If you can take a shot at that, that would be fantastic. And what I would say is, you don't need to reinvent or rewrite everything. If you organize it the way you just described it, and can pull the content in from the report as it exists, and weed out the extraneous stuff, I think that's really what the ask is. I don't want to turn you into an author where you got a deadline. That's
Yeah,
hard.
no, I know what you're saying. I'm just,
Okay.
that's kind of my constraint, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I understand. So you're okay with tackling it?
Yeah, I wrote, like I said, that's what I ended up doing today essentially, was writing stuff on a laptop and then printing it off, because I can actually do that. I just can't,
Send.
I can't send it, and I can't cut and paste from the
All the other
materials
emails and all that stuff.
that we have either. So, I mean, when I did that piece that I sent that had all the quotes in it, that was literally me.
I don't
Might
remember
fix
what
you
is.
They might fix you tomorrow.
Randy, what is your email system? Are you using Gmail? What is your, so I found this out when I found out that I was traveling and I was going to have limited access, is you can turn on, there's a switch to flip in Gmail that will download your inbox to your computer. And that, so what happens is anything that you send goes into an outbox and doesn't get sent to you, get a connection. But all of the things that you have in your inbox, or whatever other pieces you choose, get stored locally on your computer. That solves your cut and paste problem.
That's essentially where I got it from, but then to keep it up long enough to move it from there over was the problem.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I
I
understand.
knew it was there, yeah, I had it there, but it just,
All right. If you can do that and let me know when you have a copy, if you can send it, great. If you can't, let me know you can't send it, and we'll figure out something. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much. On behalf of everybody here.
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so that is going to push that, and again, like the final pitch that we talked about, that means that we're all going to have to kind of be alert to that final report going forward. Okay? So we'll watch for it. Would it be helpful if I sent a text to everybody when there's an email waiting for you to look at, just so you know it's there?
Once he does the hard copy of the original, of what he's going to create,
Yeah.
when it comes to you, I know you're going to ask us all to start looking at it. And I know you're going to want us to send you the responses, so when you read all the responses.
And send a new one out, it'll be revision 1, revision 2,
Right.
revision 3, like a normal.
Whichever one, or put the time behind it, 10:25, 10:28, 10:27.
I think we need a cutoff point for, when you send it out, tell everybody when they have to get comments by, and if they don't get comments by then.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
That was the other problem I was having, is I essentially have everything come into my phone now, but
That was like me.
well, the complicated part is.
It's tough to read in the phone.
Well, it's tough to read on the phone, but it's also, and that's what I started trying to respond. I started trying to answer that via my phone after I had so much problem with it,
But Randy, do pros and cons. When you're looking at this and summing some stuff up and you're
I don't
trying to,
think I'm against putting pros and cons in.
I am not.
Obvious to me what the pros and cons are.
So you're narrowly looking at this again without at least,
Maybe you can talk about it.
Well,
Yeah.
so the pitch is going to weigh all of the pros and cons we talked about over the last 2
thank
weeks.
you.
That's going to be in the pitch.
But, so that also needs to be in the report.
No, I don't think
Does
so.
not.
You don't
This is
think so?
This is the report. The pitch is different. He'll do a
The way I look at this is our output is twofold. I'm not counting the audio visual stuff. It's the pitch that we present to town council, and if somebody wants to look at supplemental data, then it's in that report. And
Just
those two things
supplemental,
don't,
okay.
those two things don't
Wow,
have to
that's different.
synchronize, or we will get all burnt up in trying to figure out how to synchronize that.
Plus, the town council should ask enough questions where they're gonna hit every objection, I would assume.
You don't have a lot of time. You don't.
Yeah, it's going to be, try to highlight, the few things that we know we want to highlight, and, so I'm already filtering what we can and can't say, and everything that I can't get in the pitch that I think we should say, we'll review and trying to make sure that it is in the report, so at least those thoughts aren't lost. But that's kind of where we are, and I don't really know what the expectation is for a report. So I just think it would be unfortunate to lose a lot of the conversations that we've had and the research that we've done. We should not let that slide. So we'll try to capture that as best we can. That make sense?
Right.
It doesn't always have to be in paragraph form either. We could just put tables in that say,
Yep.
here's the
Tables-
beach towns we
tables,
looked at, here's when
bullets.
they started, here's how much. Right, so it doesn't have to be in paragraph form that we looked at.
That's a great point. It doesn't have to be a narrative, right? It can be, just the data that somebody could look at and pick up supporting detail.
Look at my notes. I already did
Okay.
mine.
So that's the final
I'm just gonna
report,
put it- I'm just gonna-
gaps and responsibilities. I think we just talked a little bit about the go-forward timing, but let's go ahead and go through that one more time. So I will, when I have the pitch ready, I will email it to you guys and I'll send you all a text, so you know that it's available to look at. And the email will have an expected response time, and I'm not going to measure that in too tight a time frame, right? I know everybody's got lives and you've got to do their thing. But I will, I will tell everybody, I'd like to get a response by a certain time. And then anybody else that sends a reply, if you could, just add to the text that I just sent a reply to whatever, and that way we've kind of got a little notification system that just shortens the cycle of time that it would take to get this all polished up. Okay, so that'll kind of be event-driven, but my goal is to have the report ready and the pitch ready to hand in Monday by noon, unless somebody tells me otherwise. And they haven't yet. So, and I ask. So I'm assuming that we've got some leeway for this. All right? 6 o'clock meeting on Tuesday. Everybody's invited. Everybody, I encourage you to attend. We're going to set up, and I'm going over this again, Christie, kind of for your benefit. We're going to set this room up with committee kind of sitting at an arranged set of tables here. I'm going to do the presentation up there so I don't have to wear a mask and still be distanced from people. Walk through that, and then after we get through the formal part of the pitch, we'll open it up for questions, and then we'll have a mic to hand around to people to comment or provide supplementary information or demonstrate the information that you have and the knowledge that you have.
Is that allowed?
I'm told that we could do that however we wanted to do it.
Okay.
As far as the Q&A and that process. So yeah, I think we're good. And that was with David. So.
What did you guys decide about Mary Ann's additional dissenting opinion?
It's going to be part of the report.
Hey, this is 5-2 against, 5-4, 2 against. And if people want to tell who voted for what, I don't have a problem with that either.
No, me neither.
But that's the same as a dissenting opinion. I mean,
I
not the Supreme
specifically say
Court.
it's mine, and I mean, I didn't know if
Yeah.
you wanted to go in and do something with me.
I might add a little to it.
Do your own? Okay.
No, I might add a little to yours.
Oh, you might, well, I was supposed to say, if you want to
Yeah.
work on one, because we really do essentially.
And what's the worst that can happen? I mean, it's from what we talked about, it's a good discussion point. There's nothing wrong with that.
True.
When I speak to it in town council, it should go in the report, but I'm going to speak specifically about that as well.
Okay.
So that they know the gravity of which way things went and which ones were the more contentious
And
topics.
we went by votes.
Yeah.
Not everybody agreed, which you wouldn't expect everybody to agree.
Right. Yep. That's going to be part of what I talk about on each of the topics.
Okay.
That make sense to you, Randy? That note? You probably already knew it, but I happened to just write it down today.
I didn't remember, and I don't take a whole lot of notes on that. When I do this is going to take, the part I'm going to do, it's going to take a little bit of fleshing out for you. I'm going to kind of do the outline and hit a bunch of the highlights and stuff, and if there's anything else that needs to be pulled from somewhere else.
That's totally fair. Do your best.
You do you.
And, yeah,
You do you.
Don't
And send it to
worry.
'em.
Don't worry about what I have to do.
Yeah.
I've already been flushing out details from emails and notes and conversations and minutes and all kinds of stuff. So we'll have that kind of thing.
Sounds good.
Okay. I think that was it for my agenda. We're early.
Wow.
Okay, Rick, I have these notebooks. You can go.
Can we adjourn?
I have all the material in notebook form. I can easily give these to you too, if you want to attach them.
I've got it. I've got it all in folders in my.
Excellent meeting. It's early.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Are we,
You.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick 5-minute restroom break and then come back and I don't know where you are with meeting minutes.
I literally have nothing with me. I'm sorry. They're done. I just
Okay.
don't have anything with me. So I'll just email or bring them by your house tomorrow or whatever.
I don't think you need to do that.
Okay.
If you bring them to the meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine.
If you would just send them out so that
Yeah.
everybody gets a chance to get a quick look at them,
Mhm.
because then we can do a quick circle around and say, are we good? And then
That's fine.
Okay.
So are we done?
5-minute break. Is that
I
what you
said 5-minute break, but we can take a 5-minute break and come back and be done. In which case our 5-minute break is an adjourn.
So I make
anybody
a
have
motion,
anything else? Anything else that we need to chat about? We'll go ahead and adjourn.
Move the adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second, done.